Medical disclaimer. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and does not serve as medical advice. Kate and John are not medical professionals. This podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or prevent any illness. Always consult your physician before making lifestyle changes. Welcome back to the Illuminated Path. This is episode 11. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about stress management and things that you can do physically and for your body. If you are here to listen to this episode, we thank you very much because this is our third time recording this episode. We had some issues with a corrupt SD card recording the audio. Thought we fixed it, recorded again, and yeah, so it's been a fun week. That's us dealing with our own stress right there for you. So that's been fun.
You know, it's funny because we have multiple cameras, and if something goes wrong with the camera, you show a different shot. But we're recording into an audio interface, so the second that audio is done, the
That's all we
episode
have.
can't be produced.
Yeah.
How's the week?
The week is good.
Better now?
Better now. I had a very busy weekend last weekend, so I went wedding dress shopping for the first time. I tried on like 17 or 18 dresses. It was a very interesting experience, but it was really nice. I had a baby shower for my sister-in-law, and that was a wonderful time, and I'm so excited to meet our new baby niece or nephew in just a few months. I can't believe it. I'm really excited for that. And we had to change the clocks, so one of our dogs, Tico, is not a fan of the time change.
He's on his own clock.
He is on a clock, and he's been waking us up at like 5 a.m. So yeah, that's been fun trying to get him to understand slowly that, the time changed, and yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm excited. I just feel like there's a lot kind of getting figured out. Like we redid our schedules. We have a pretty solid idea of our new projects and kind of the things we're going to start building around the podcast. And
Yeah.
I'm reading a new book. I'm reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is it's a money book that a lot of entrepreneurs recommend, and it's been really good. It's really about like mindset with money, so that's been good. And then I'm doing my new workout routine, and I just feel so much more like I'm actually getting stuff done, and I'm getting in a much better place in terms of like actually fasting again, and it just feels good to be back into all of it.
Yeah, and I'm proud of you for that new workout routine and being so consistent with the gym, because at the beginning of this podcast, you were talking about struggling with the gym, and,
Yeah.
in a matter of 11 episodes, look where you are now.
Yeah. I had a lot of fear about having another injury, and yeah, I love exercise so much. So to kind of be back there and having it be such a consistent part of my life again it feels really good.
Yeah.
So let's get started. The last episode we talked about, we kind of got into the discussion of stress, but there's a lot of different components to this, and there's a lot of different ways to manage stress. And today, what we're talking about is really more those physical um, management techniques, right? Those things you can do that are helping it from a physical perspective.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about that, because I know this kind of we get taken back, right, to just our basic needs.
Yeah. So in the last episode, we talked a lot about stress. So if you haven't listened to that one, I highly recommend it. But I talked about how when you're feeling stress and you are triggered, that fight or flight response is triggered. We really have to see it as our body communicating to us. It's communicating to us that it needs something, it needs to feel safe again. And it's like an alarm system. So, what I wanted to talk about today is that we really have these basic human needs that, unfortunately, I don't feel like we're really taught to prioritize these as we're growing up. Because from a young age, when we're in high school, we're already starting to learn what a life of chaos, busy schedules, lack of sleep, and stresses.
Yeah.
And it only gets worse from there.
Yeah, I mean, you start piling on your extracurriculars and
Sports, and then you have homework. And I mean, I remember that very well. I'm sure you do. We both
yeah.
played sports in high school. And it's like, it was almost like training for like going into college and having even less sleep and pulling all nighters. And then you move on to getting a job, and it's even more time and more stress and more chaos. So we're not taught during that time to like really make sure that our basic needs are being met first.
Yeah.
We're just taught to like handle it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sets you up for like, you don't do anything about it until you either take a very big step back and be like, am I actually enjoying the ways that I'm spending my time? Because so many people fill their schedule with things they don't even like, or you reach breaking point and you snap and
Yeah.
you're like, I'm not enjoying anything. And that's really kind of that moment of awareness and taking inventory on, what do I restructure to?
Yeah. So some of those basic human needs that I'm mentioning, and we're going to get into some of these today. Movement is a huge one. We are not meant to be sedentary human beings sitting at a desk for 10 hours a day,
Right?
but unfortunately, a lot of people are doing that. We have needs to go outside and be in nature and breathe in fresh air, get our feet in the ground, and have sunshine.
Yeah.
That's healing for us. We have needs to eat nourishing foods. Food is meant to, support our bodies, support our systems, give ourselves energy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of foods out there that don't do that.
No,
And
I,
we're
I
just
mean,
living and getting by on those.
really, zoom back out. Like you're eating at its core to fuel your body, to keep yourself alive.
Right.
And, we talked about this in the food episode, episode 6, is be mindful of, are you eating to fuel yourself or are you eating for dopamine?
Yeah. Sleep is a huge one, which we'll get further into. But like I said, it feels like that's something that's learned at a young age to start losing and not prioritizing that sleep.
Yep.
Community. We need community. We need to be connected with others, have help from others, and also provide help to other people. Socializing, all of that is a need.
Yeah.
As well as breath work and just being aware of your breathing, because so many people are just breathing very fast and shallow all day long, every day, because
Mm.
they are chronically stressed. And that's
Yeah.
also affecting like all of our systems.
I was going to mention, there was something I read a while back that basically what happens when we're chronically stressed is we start breathing very shallow.
Mhm.
And that shallow breathing causes issues in terms of like we're not actually filling our lungs. We're not really getting the oxygen that we need throughout our body. So
Right.
again, it creates these chronic issues.
Yeah. So, and then we wanted to mention, your health really is your wealth.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to speak more to what I had written, choose your hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's such an important perspective to take into your life is you choose your hard. You're either choosing the hard of prioritizing yourself and cultivating that discipline in your life, or you're going to have the hard down the line of being in a hospital bed or some sort of sickness where, you know, I don't think you can really argue. Like, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to end up sick.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I think it's frankly easier to be doing small things every day and having a lifestyle that supports the prevention of issues arising rather
yeah.
than getting into an issue and then trying to reverse it.
Well, I mean, the thing too is like, you don't simply by living a healthy lifestyle, you don't guarantee that you're never going to have a health issue.
Right.
But you also do a lot to get yourself much further. Whereas if you don't do anything and then you end up sick, it becomes a much more drastic change that you have to make in
Right.
that event.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, choose your hard. your heart is health now or sickness later,
Right.
you know?
And lastly, before we dive into the different topics, I just want to remind everyone that you cannot shame or belittle yourself into changing. You need to actually believe that you're capable of change. You need to understand that change is hard and that your subconscious mind doesn't like change. It likes comfort and, you know, things that you're used to. But that doesn't help you grow. That doesn't help you better yourself. So you need to believe that you're capable of change and be creating that new identity and start slow and don't belittle yourself through it. There
Yeah.
will be hard days. I'm sure you've heard, growth is not linear. And it really is true.
Yeah. Watch episode 4 on manifestation, creating a new identity. And in the last episode on stress, we also talked about neural networks and kind of how you program yourself and start to rewire and develop that new identity.
Yeah, the new habits, new lifestyle. I had a really good analogy in that episode. So
That was
take
that
a
was
peek.
awesome. Fire, as the kids say.
Wow. Okay. So
It was lit.
who are you?
All right. First one, exercise.
I am sure that everyone here has heard of exercise is important. It needs to be prioritized. And we are here to also remind you of that. And the fact that there are many different ways you can try to exercise. There are so many different options. But like I said, our basic human needs is to have movement.
Yeah.
We need movement in our day. Our body needs to move. We need to get energy out. And exercise also will help give you more energy.
Yeah. It's a little tough at first if you do have, you're a lot of people who are stressed too, are chronically fatigued. But in pushing through that, exercising and consistently doing that, you're increasing your energy levels. It takes time and it's difficult at first, but it's worth the reward you get.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody saying that, they regret a workout
Yeah.
after they do it. You always feel better unless
Mm-hmm.
you injure yourself.
Right.
But it gives you endorphins. So that's that feel good hormone already.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of speak to that too, because there's a lot of interesting reasons to exercise. Um, Biologically, what happens is your body like almost sort of reverses its aging.
Hmm.
Exercise reduces the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. It also, and this is a really important one for this podcast, is it improves the neuroplasticity of your brain. So if you are someone actively trying to create new habits, to rewire your brain, develop a new identity, work on a big manifestation, exercise is an important integral component of that.
Yeah. Exercise is also a natural antidepressant.
Yep, there was a neuroscientist, I want to say in the last decade or so, and they basically found these like miracle proteins that when your muscles contract, they create these natural antidepressants, and they also help your immune system function. And now there's a lot of speculation. They're starting studies on muscle mass might actually correlate to a stronger immune system too.
Yeah. So really try to aim for, 30 minutes to an hour a day of exercise. Walking is truly a great exercise.
Walking is one of the most simple forms of exercise that is directly affecting your general health.
Right.
It does so much for you. Now they're starting to study like the pace of your walking. So if you are intentionally trying to just get a little bit quicker, that that does so much for your body, your heart, your immune system, your muscles, everything. So literally, I think people overlook walking because it seems like this very like boring, simple thing, but truly just going outside could be life changing for you. We talked about phytoncides in the air, natural born killers.
Mhm.
They fight cancer, they help your immune system, they do so much. Being outside is beneficial for you. And we can also go into the electromagnetic frequency of the earth and how that heals you.
Right.
So, literally being outside, but it could be as simple as a walk.
Yeah, and if you can't get outside, there's so many more options to do that inside as well. I've seen people, walking on a treadmill while watching a TV show. So, you want to like chill out and relax, but you're kind of doing it in a productive way.
Yeah.
Or the desk treadmills, which we have. There's also ellipticals or little bicycles that you can get for under your desk. So if like you're really strapped for time,
Yeah.
which I hear so many people say, you can find a way to incorporate some sort of movement and exercise,
Yeah.
and be doing it multitasking in some way. I like to listen to podcasts while I work out.
Yeah. Atomic Habits talks about habit stacking. And it's kind of like, when I do this, I immediately chain this next to it, or I'm doing the two together. And
Yeah.
so, it maybe Netflix isn't the greatest habit, but if you are sitting down watching Netflix, get a trampoline, get a little, a bike or a rower or something for your home, for your living room. It's as simple as that. And the other thing I wanted to say is like, we live very sedentary, but if you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, taking 1 hour out of your day is not a massive commitment. I mean, for your health, for your biggest priority.
Mhm.
So I think it's very easy for people to say, I don't have time. And I just think that argument's bullshit because everybody's busy. Everybody is swamped.
Yeah. But
Take the
this,
hour for your future.
right, like this is a priority that you should find the time for
Yeah,
over something else that maybe isn't
100%.
as important.
Yep.
All right. You ready to go to the next topic?
Well, I also want to say with exercise, try things.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so many things you can do. There's so many different options for exercise. Strength training, weightlifting is probably the biggest one. A lot of times you hear women say, I don't want to get muscular. That's not really how it works. There's intention. You have to eat certain amounts of protein and you actually overeat to put the weight on. Um, Strength training and lifting weights is literally one of the greatest forms of exercise. Also try things, go to a class, go to a spinning class, go to a circuit training class, kickboxing. There's
Zumba.
Zumba. I did some Zumba in college. There's so many things you can do and try. And the big thing that I want to mention there too is if you go to a class, a lot of times those are people in similar situations who are trying to get back into a routine, find some structure in their exercise, and find what they like. I think the biggest part of exercise is exploring, much like meditation, and finding a style of it that works for you.
Yeah. And doing a class sometimes helps you with that accountability a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. Up next is food.
So we did an entire episode on food, and that was one episode. There's definitely more to come on food, which was episode
6.
good at that.
Yeah.
Um, but at the core, listen to episode 6 if you haven't. But at the core, like we mentioned earlier, our food is meant to nourish our body and give our body what it needs to run efficiently, to have energy, to to make our digestive system work properly,
Yeah.
to support us in getting good sleep. I mean, there's so many reasons for food, and unfortunately, the standard American diet doesn't really prioritize that for us.
I mean, put it this way, the more we discover about the human biology, the more we learn that it's connected to the gut
Right. And
and protecting that biome.
yeah, our food is medicine.
Yep.
Food is medicinal. And so I really just urge you to be mindful of eating whole, nutrient dense food, single ingredients. And there's so many ways that you can do that when you're cooking at home to simplify it, to meal prep, to throw a bunch of stuff on a sheet pan and put it in the oven and have meals for days. I
Yeah.
know that like time again is a big issue, and that's why people will order out or go out or whatever so often, but you're consuming a lot of stuff that can be harmful and can create more stress, and eating right will help you lower that stress.
Yeah. So I want to kind of clarify like at the core of this, the struggle with food is inflammatory foods. And the big thing in terms of like eating out is the oils. There's a lot of inflammatory oils when you eat out. Um, so definitely focus on real whole foods. And again, that's your 85-15 rule that we've talked about. Um, be human, allow yourself room to be human, but also have a strong kind of foundation of how you approach your food and your diet.
Yeah, and then I also wanted to mention, which we talked a little bit more in the food episode too, was understanding what happens with your blood sugar.
Yeah.
When we have blood sugar spikes, it really creates a lot of stress. It,
Inflammation. Yeah.
it like we wore the continuous glucose monitors for a couple of months, and when we saw ourselves spiking, we felt it. We felt anxious. We felt just not great.
Yeah. My sleep suffered.
Oh yeah, it completely affects your sleep because for hours your body doesn't know what to do with that much extra sugar. And so
Yeah.
gluten, carbs, they're all
Starches.
seen as sugar in the body. So you may think that it's not an issue because you're eating something like rice, but
Rice
rice is
has
seen as sugar in the body.
has a lot of starches in it, and
Yeah.
it will spike you. And so in episode 6, we talked about that eating in order. So doing your vegetables, then your protein, then your carbs or a starch. And we did that with our glucose monitors and could actually tangibly see that we weren't spiking versus eating the same thing the day before and not eating in order. Um, so we got to really see firsthand like the effects of having that spike. And the other thing I want to mention too is like it's not like you just spike and then you come back down. Like it really depends on what you have. Um, if you do eat like a sugar, starch, carb heavy meal, you could be spiking for 3 hours. You could be spiking for 10 hours throughout the night. I
Yeah.
mean, when we first got our monitors, it took me about 48 hours because I was just having so many carbs, so many. I talked about my mango slices.
Mm,
I was always spiked, and that helped me come back down and actually find a baseline.
yeah. And as well, alcohol is also seen. It's got carbs, it's got sugar. I just it bothers me that this societal like agreement that we've all made that alcohol is supposed to help us unwind,
Mm.
alcohol is actually making your stress worse. Like,
Well, it's not just the carbs or the sugar in alcohol either. Like some of it is just no calories, nothing, and it's straight alcohol. But the bigger issue with alcohol is that it affects your nervous system. It depresses it. But what that does in the long run is actually lower your threshold to stress. Alcohol makes you feel more stress,
yeah.
and it pretty much ruins your baseline. Like
Mhm.
you're constantly you're not going to be in the same place. The more you have alcohol, the more susceptible you are going to be to stress. And again, sorry to burst your bubble, but it is a toxin, it's a poison. And that is also creating inflammation in your body. Latest research on it says it shrinks your brain.
Yeah.
So, do with that what you will.
Yeah. But recently I was somewhere where I had a lot of gluten. I'm typically gluten free, but I do allow myself if I go out to a gathering or a restaurant or something, like I'm not like, oh my gosh, I can't touch it. But typically I'm having, a good amount of protein, healthy fats, and then a little bit of that gluten, and I handle it okay. But I had so much gluten, so much carbs that by the end of the night, I had a massive headache. And I'm not someone who gets headaches on a
Yeah.
regular basis at all. And so that was just very telling. And that was some really not fun symptoms to be having.
You were out that night.
I did not feel good. um, yeah. So, last about food, do you want to talk about adaptogens?
Yeah. So adaptogens are a really simple thing that you can put in your diet. They essentially help your body uh, kind of regulate that stress and respond to stress. Um, so let me kind of just read the definition and I'll explain what it means. A natural substance considered to help the body adapt to stress and to exert a normalizing effect upon bodily processes. So that it really is helping your body manage stress. And it's also, it really consider a lot of stress is your nervous system. So adaptogens help your body regulate that and regulate your response to stress, the how much stress you're feeling. Some examples: ashwagandha, rhodiola rosea, maca, ginseng is one, holy basil. And so these are things that you can incorporate in your diet. Very simple to do. I used to put like maca, rhodiola, I would put those in my smoothies. You made pesto out of holy basil.
It was so good.
So good. You got to do that. It's been a while. Um, but it's just like a very small, simple tool you can put in your arsenal. Um, and I always mention with herbs too, like I think people have this tendency to be like, oh my God, wow, I'm gonna take this and it's just gonna be like, holy cow. No, but it's one more thing that you can do as a sustainable lifestyle choice.
Yeah, it's the consistency of it that's going to add up to feeling better and
Yeah.
having that support.
I mean, you're helping your body regulate. Um, Up next, environmental toxins.
Yes. So there is a lot of toxins in our environment, in our everyday lives. And, there comes a point where our bodies are becoming very overloaded with these toxins. Our body is meant to be able to detox, but when you are consuming and inhaling and just absorbing toxins all day, every day, it starts to add up and become too much. And these toxins, we'll get into examples of things, but they cause health issues. These have been studied and researched, and there are toxins in our everyday lives that are neurotoxins, which means they're affecting our nervous system, which is directly what manages our stress.
Yep.
They are carcinogenic, they cause cancer, and they're endocrine disruptors. They affect our hormones, which affect so many other things as well.
Yep. That's so like I think the thing is like hormones are affecting so many things from your sleep cycle, your melatonin production, waking up, like even
Mhm.
just exercise, putting on muscle, how your body's regulating food. Like there's so many things. So when you really consider like the culmination of environmental toxins and cleaners and then the toxins in our food, like the reality is we always talk about this, right? And I think people kind of act like it's over the top. But the thing is, I don't think there's enough of an understanding of you're getting these quote unquote trace amounts from everything.
Right.
And the reality is, when these things are tested, very frequently they contain more than what is allowed because there isn't ongoing testing all the time.
Yeah. So this isn't meant to put you into fear.
Right.
And, unfortunately, we want to trust and believe that everything on the shelf in a store is perfectly healthy and safe, but that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And if you look in other countries, a lot of the ingredients that are allowed here are banned, and there are reasons of why that is.
Yeah. I mean, we're that's kind of what we're doing here and educating and hoping that in the meantime the powers that be get their act together.
Yeah, but this is again about taking your health into your own hands. So, to get into some examples of everyday things that you're around, that you're using that have toxic chemicals in them, household cleaners, whatever you're using to spray, to clean glass, to clean your counters, there's a lot of times that there are bad chemicals in those.
So I want to just kind of clarify too, like a lot of what we're talking about here are just like the mainstream products on the shelves at the big stores.
Yeah.
There's also now, luckily, we're in a time where a lot of stores do have a somewhat safer option. Um, but household cleaners are really one to focus on because the majority of these have been identified as neurotoxins directly linked to Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah. And there are easy swaps to
Yes.
make. And that's something that we're going to be working on behind the scenes is, a bigger list of easy swaps that you can make. These things are,
Ingredients to look out for. Yeah.
yeah, they're found at Amazon, at Target, at Walmart. Like, it's not like you have to go digging for these cleaner and safer
You don't
options.
have to ship it from Europe and wait a month.
No, it's not difficult, and I feel like there's this misconception that it's all way more expensive, and that's
Yep.
definitely not the case as well.
A lot of times the non-toxic ones are safer or cheaper. And I also too feel like the bigger brands as they've gotten more popular, like I don't think people realize like they continue to just cut the products with chemicals, but then
Mhm.
they charge you more for the brand. When in reality, they're actually just increasing their costs and increasing their bottom line. And this kind of goes back to the book I talked about, The Soul of Money, which is really like allocating your resources to businesses that are helping people,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. So for, like, household cleaners, we use vinegar. It is so cheap, and my gosh, it works really well.
Yep. I think I want to mention with vinegar, um, people tend to think like it's going to stink stuff up. It doesn't. The smell of vinegar actually breaks down odor molecules. So once it dries, it's odorless, but it also removes any odors that are there.
Yeah.
And it
Um,
kills something like 90 something percent of bacteria and viruses. So vinegar is great.
yeah. Other options or other, things to consider switching are laundry detergent. I made our own.
Yeah.
And it was easy, it was cheap, and it works way better. We have 3 huskies. We're washing blankets and comforters and everything constantly, and when we made that switch, like, it came out cleaner and smelling better than ever before.
Softer. Yep.
Vinegar can be used as a fabric softener. There's issues with chemicals in fabric softeners, dryer sheets.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so this used to happen to me as a kid, um, but I know it's not exclusive to me. A lot of people have talked about this. Is when you use those like big name laundry detergents and fabric softeners, a lot of times you get this like tingly sensation on your skin. That is your skin, your largest organ, right, reacting to the chemicals.
Yeah. As well as, the soap that you're using to wash your dishes in your dishwasher. You literally have food going on that you're consuming directly in your mouth.
A lot of times they've found there's still residue on those from your dishwasher. A lot of them contain microplastics.
Yeah,
So you're kind of leaving that nasty residue. You put hot food on that, it gets infused in your food. So there's a lot of areas where you're kind of taking in these toxins that, again, I know like talking about all this, it can sound overwhelming, but it's really simple to just make these swaps. And that's kind of what we want to drive home is like, this isn't some like ridiculous thing you have to do. I mean, it literally is just buy a different product that's often cheaper.
right. And then I'll get into some personal products, like personal care products, because like you mentioned, a lot of these are used on our skin, which is absorbing directly into our body. So anything that you're using for skincare to wash your face or what you're washing your body with, your shampoo, um, any type of products that you're using in your hair or makeup, especially toothpaste. These things are literally like being directly absorbed into your body and they're causing issues. I mean, there was a lot of times where I used to use makeup that had chemicals and wasn't good for my body, and my body reacted and showed me that. So not everyone's going to have that reaction, but I did, and I saw a difference when I switched to a much cleaner option. And like my um, skincare that I use is Coco Kind, and it is cheap.
Mm,
It is
it's
so
really cheap.
affordable, and it is so clean, and it's such an amazing company.
And I think that's what's interesting too is like we're living in a time where these businesses have to kind of undercut the main brands when in reality, like I would pay more, for that non-toxic option.
Yeah,
Um, and skincare especially because so many of those have carcinogens in them and you put it on your face.
right.
Um,
Deodorant. You want to mention
Deodorant is
deodorant?
one that I always, 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 it's like the first place I tell people to start with non toxic because the first thing you have to do is kind of detox your body. So most deodorant contains an aluminum salt, and that's really bad. It goes in your body, you're putting it on. You put it under your pits. Your pits don't get like, a lot of air and breathing. Um, and basically there's studies on this where they're saying like they found aluminum in breast cancer tissue, but they're saying it's not definitive that it's from the deodorant. But like, let's be real. You're putting that's the source of aluminum salts. So my point is there's a lot of speculation about the harm that this aluminum is causing the body. And it's a really simple swap. But what I want to explain too is those aluminum salts are preventing your body from really sweating and excreting sweat how it needs to. So anytime you switch from a deodorant that has aluminum to one that doesn't, you're going to have a sort of calibration period where you're sweating a little more, maybe a little stinky,
Mhm,
but it goes away and it's worth, switching to a non-toxic option.
mhm.
Um, and what I wanted to say there is like, truly, you can go to the store and find one that says no aluminum. Start there. Kate and I are working on a much larger resource for people to start to make much healthier options with their personal products.
Yeah.
And the other one too is dandruff shampoo. So I used to have, because these were like my two big struggles. I used to sweat like crazy and I would buy this medicated, super high aluminum deodorant. And then I used to have bad dandruff. And I found out that in the dandruff shampoo, they use this like chemical salt that actually creates more dandruff.
Mhm.
So finding non toxic options is what got rid of all this for me. So it really is about like when you use non toxic options and more natural ingredients, you're often going to give your body the chance to re regulate. And a lot of these issues will go away because a lot of those issues are the result of these synthetic chemicals that your body's not really equipped to handle.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Number 4 is sleep.
So, as we mentioned, your sleep is a huge priority. I know that so many people are struggle with this, especially if you have children. I'm struggling with this with my dog right now.
Yep.
And I know that it's hard, but that's why it really has to be a big priority to try to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night and do your best to like really schedule a consistent sleep schedule where you're allowing yourself that time because this is the time where you are in rest and digest. This is the time where your body is actively repairing and recovering from stress, as well as helping to prevent further stress.
Yeah. I mean, this is literally when your body's reducing its inflammation.
Right.
And so you need to make sure you're giving your body that time. And we've talked about this too, is like getting in rest and digest without needing to go to sleep. And that's, a larger discussion about lifestyle choices. But it really is like sleep and exercise are your most potent forms of medicine.
Right. And so I mentioned, having a consistent sleep schedule, and it really is very good to have your circadian rhythm be set and have a your wake time and sleep time be the same. Your cortisol levels, which is a hormone, is the
Yes.
highest when you wake up.
Yeah, it spikes within about 90 minutes of you waking up.
And then at night, your melatonin is produced, which is another hormone in our body. And it's much easier for us to be getting that good sleep if it is a consistent time because our body then knows this is the time that I'm going to be spiking my cortisol and waking up. And this is the time that I'm going to be starting to wind down for bed.
Yeah. And I think as I understand it, it's kind of like when you wake up. Did you mention that you want sunshine in the morning?
No, you can say that.
Okay. So when you wake up, most like sleep experts, they're finding basically you want to get sunshine within 5 to 20 minutes of waking up
In your eyes.
in your eyes, on your face, in your eyes. And, I'm not going to sit here and act like we do that every day. That's pretty difficult to do.
Mhm.
But that is the ideal. And as I understand it, you're kind of starting that process of telling your body in 12 to 16 hours, whatever it is, we're going to start producing melatonin. And you're starting to regulate your circadian rhythm. Um, a couple things that I want to mention is again, this is really about your sleep habits, your sleep routine, which has been a lifelong journey for me. Um, but two things to keep in mind. Number one, you always hear people say unplug at night, right? An hour before you go to bed, put your phone down. The reason for that is the photoreceptors in your eyes, they need a lack of light to start producing melatonin. And I know people wear blue light glasses. I wear blue light glasses. That doesn't solve the problem. You're still getting light in your eyes.
Mhm.
So what happens is when you have that light in your eyes, you're going to miss your melatonin spike at night. You're not going to be as tired. You're going to have trouble sleeping because you're basically telling your body it's still daylight.
Yeah, stay awake.
Stay awake. And then the other one is the lights in your home. So America just banned like the remaining fluorescent,
It was
iridescent,
iridescent, I think.
whatever. So they banned those lights. And so we can't use them anymore. We're all using LEDs. And that's great because LEDs are more efficient. But it's not so great because LED has a spectrum of light that is similar to the sun. It's almost simulating daylight. It's kind of why you can take, a light and put it on a plant, an LED and put it on a plant and it'll grow
Mhm.
because there's spectrums in there that are kind of like daylight. And so what that does for your body at night, you're telling your skin is absorbing that light and you're also telling it, "Hey, it's daylight. We're not going to bed."
Yeah.
So that's also been a concern, is how many lights do you have on at night? We do salt lamps in like every room. And I love it. It's just like nice ambient lighting,
Yeah, so turn off the lights, lower your lighting. I'm, like,
anti-light.
anti-light. I, like, don't like having lights on at all. I mean, even the lights that we use to record our podcast is a lot for me, but,
Yeah.
yeah, lower your lights at night, help your body realize it's time to wind down.
Yeah. And that's a larger discussion. We'll do a full episode on sleep, but um definitely start assessing your habits in terms of your sleep routine.
Yeah.
Up next is a breath focused practice. So this kind of starts to tie into the mental component of stress management. But I want you to kind of take us through this and then also take us through the vagus nerve, because this is a really important thing to understand in terms of your stress.
Yeah, so, there is the aspect of turning a breath-focused practice into, like, a meditation, but just focusing on your breath alone is something that we don't do, and we don't come back to our breath and realize, like, we're breathing really shallow, we're breathing really fast, and not giving our body what it needs. So, there's a lot of things that we can do to incorporate a very short, it does not need to take a lot of time, and that is a breath focused practice. Whether you are doing it first thing in the morning to start your day and like telling yourself, okay, I'm calm and I'm going into my day. But really, your breath is always with you. So
Mm,
the point is when you're doing a breath focused practice, you can really just sit and remind yourself and focus on inhaling and exhaling
yeah.
and doing that for a few minutes. There's also a lot of different ways like that you can do it with different counts. So one that I want to mention is Dr. Andrew Huberman. He did like a 5 hour long episode apparently on like a podcast episode on like your breathing.
Mm,
And he mentioned something that he calls a psychological sigh. And it's something that you can do literally when you are stressed. It takes like a minute. So I really invite you to try this next time you're feeling stressed. The important part is that you make your inhale shorter than your exhale because when you do that, it slows down your heart rate. And so the psychological sigh is taking two short inhales and then a long exhale and doing that like 3 times. And then giving yourself a minute because it's not like you do it and then it's immediately better. But like I will do it for longer than that. I'll do it for maybe a minute and then like I start to feel my body kind of going back down. But it's really just like,
mm,
it's easy.
yeah.
It's so easy. So if you're feeling stressed, try to remember to do this and do it a few times. Just take a minute to come back to your breath.
Yeah. So a couple things I wanted to say there. Number one, when they teach monks, they teach them that your breath is always with you. And so you should learn to train it. You should learn to understand it and have an awareness about it in your life. The other thing is when you're doing a breath focus practice, one of the things that you can do. So Kate mentioned really focus on your inhale, your exhale. And I wanted to mention this because I talk about how I, studied the ultra wealthy, ultra healthy. And a common practice of the ultra wealthy is they get up in the morning and they do 2 minutes of breath work. They meditate usually later in the day, but they start the day with breath work, not a meditation, just simply sitting and collecting yourself and being in tune with your breath. And when I talk to people about how you can start meditating, that's one of the simplest ways to do it. Don't talk about it. Don't even think about it in terms of a meditation. It's just sitting and connecting with your breath. And so when your thoughts wander, you focus on two words: inhale, exhale, and
Mhm.
just keep pulling yourself back to that. Keep directing your attention on your breath.
Yeah, and everybody can find just a couple minutes
Yeah.
to make a major difference
Yeah,
in your
absolutely.
health and in your well-being and in your ability to manage stress. And your breathing exercises will reactivate your rest and digest and help communicate to your body that you are safe and bring you back to that parasympathetic state.
Yeah. I was going to say too, I remember reading something years ago that the parasympathetic state is actually activated through the exhale.
Yeah.
So I just looked it up real quick. It secretes a transmitter substance that lowers the heart rate and actually starts to activate it. So the rest and digest function is activated through your exhale. And so that's really good information in terms, like Kate said and Dr. Andrew Huberman found, shorten your inhale, long lengthen your exhale,
Mhm.
and that's going to help you kind of come back down.
Yeah. And something that we do sometimes is we'll like take a minute to breathe together. So
Mm,
if you have a partner,
co-regulating.
a
Yeah.
friend, a child, we do like literally 3 breaths. That's it. It's so fast, but like we'll sit there and help each other regulate. And we'll be like, okay, like whoever kind of asked for the help,
Yeah, the other one will walk you through it.
yeah, you just say inhale, and then we inhale together, and then we say sigh it out.
Yeah, so do you want to kind of talk about, did you talk about the vagus nerve?
No, I can get
All
into
right,
that
so
now.
so we say side out, and that sort of vibrates the vocal cords. And so Kate will kind of explain the vagus nerve and why this is so important to understand.
Yeah, so the vagus nerve is part of our parasympathetic nervous system. So it connects from our brain down to our nervous system. It connects to the heart, the digestive system. It's a really big component in the gut brain connection. And so it really regulates all of those functions and it's sending information between them and your brain. And our vagal tone is just that's the name for the function of the vagus nerve to, again, bring us into the parasympathetic state. So, what we want to do is stimulate our vagal tone so that it's communicating to our parasympathetic to activate that, activate rest and digest.
Mm,
So, there's a lot of things that we can do to stimulate and improve our vagal tone and be communicating that. So, one of those, like you said, is vibration of the vocal cords because the vocal cords are on the vagus nerve path from the brain down to your systems. And so you can sing, you can hum, you can chant. So we like sigh with like a vocal sigh.
yeah,
And that's vibrating your vagus nerve and really, again, telling you to relax.
and it's a lengthened exhale, longer
Right.
than our inhale. Yep.
You can also do things like tapping your chest. Um, you can do meditation, breathing exercises, like we just said. You're exercising as well as cold water therapy. So ice baths. Or if you don't have an ice bath, do it in the shower.
Yeah.
Turn your water to cold at the end of the shower, and it forces you to focus on your breathing.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing with like cold plunges and cold water therapy. Like it's not it's a shock to the system for sure, and that shock, as many times as I've listened to Dr. Andrew Huberman talk about what it does, I can't perfectly reiterate it, but it is a medicinal process. But that process is about your breath. You're breathing. you have this like spasm that releases all kinds of proteins and chemicals, and um, you know, it's so much about your breathing. When you get that shock, the challenge is staying there and breathing.
Yeah, and it feels amazing.
It feels amazing afterwards. The endorphins, they found that I want to say it's like 2-3 hours that the endorphins are spiked, which is a really long time for
Yeah.
endorphins.
Yeah. And then, so it's also good to know that your HRV, your heart rate variability, is one of the indicators of your vagal activity of your heart. So that's the time in between your heartbeats. So that's one way of kind of measuring how that is. I have an Aura ring, and that actually measures my HRV.
Mm, yeah.
So it'll tell me if like I had a bad night of sleep and my heart rate was fast, and I can usually always pinpoint like what that came from, whether it was food or stress or something. So,
I wanted to mention too, when we filmed this 2 other times, I kept mentioning this. um, there was a sleep expert who mentioned, when we lose an hour of sleep, when we
oh
roll the
yeah,
clocks back, there's a 24% increase in heart attacks. When we gain an hour, there's a 21% decrease. And that really illustrates like how important sleep is and how affected we are by 1 hour of sleep.
yeah. So
Um,
do your best to sleep and incorporate all of these things that we're mentioning. They, besides like the hour of exercise and really prioritizing enough time to sleep, this isn't really stuff that takes a lot of time. Food is about the choices that you're making. The toxins in your house is about, again, the choices you're making. A breath focused practice can be super fast.
yeah,
It's about really just trying to incorporate these new habits to help you manage stress as it comes on. And you can use some of these as tools as you feel stress, but as well as things that will help prevent stress from even occurring.
yeah,
I mean, if we were not people who incorporated these things in our lifestyle and had a lifestyle that helps us prevent stress, we felt stress when
oh god,
yesterday, when we realized our first recording didn't work, we handled it okay. But then the second one didn't work
it was tough.
and we were stressed.
We were stressed.
Like we've never had to do that, and it's unfortunate, and this is me just being real and saying like, yeah, we experienced stress, but again, if we didn't do any of these things, maybe we probably would have just been like, forget it, we're not even putting out an episode.
Nah, I'm not that person. But I did want to say, this stuff is we're getting into a lot of like the mind component too. Um, but really what I want to kind of reiterate is like you're experiencing toxins in your body. We all are. And that goes into, even the toxins in air and water, and that's a much larger episode. But my point is, we are always taking in toxins. And it's really about creating an environment where your body's able to get rid of them.
Mhm.
Like non toxic living isn't, I don't expose myself to anything toxic. It's an understanding that there's a lot of toxins and I'm going to minimize them to the best of my ability while still being a human and living in today's world.
Right.
So these stress management practices, they're this is really like your core component of stuff that's going to start to eliminate your susceptibility, like how susceptible you are to stress, and start to control your environment and the toxins coming in. So what I wanted to say, it's really lowering your baseline of stress and raising your threshold to where you're feeling stress.
Mhm.
And that's a much larger discussion about all the things you can do. And the last thing I wanted to say too about a breath focused practice, there's a technique called breath counting, which is really simple, but I find that I like to share this with people who are newer to meditation or breath work. And all it is, you pick a number. So say 4. And so you inhale, you exhale, you count 1. Inhale, exhale, 2. As when you get to 4, you start over at 1. And what happens is you'll start to notice your mind wandering, and you'll notice you counted 5. You counted to 6 or 7. And when when you notice that, you come back to 1 and start over. And this starts to train your attention
Mhm.
and give you a way to catch yourself. And don't get frustrated. Don't, there's a tendency like, oh, I can't focus. It's fine. Just decide how much time you're committing to it. And whenever you notice you've gone off, come back to 1.
Yeah.
It's a very simple way. We'll do a whole episode on breathing exercises, but that's a good one to kind of have in your toolkit.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
All right.
Third and final recording, and I can't wait for this to be out.
I hope this is it. Friendly reminder, this podcast is sponsored by New Moon Apparel. That is our Zen, moon, and motivational themed clothing line. If you did get value from this episode, please consider liking, sharing, or leaving a review. People have asked how they can help. Sharing with your network is the easiest way. That helps us get out in front of more eyeballs and
And
deliver more
ears.
value and ears. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.